As an NRI, you might be coming to India for reasons good or bad. It could be that your visa is not getting renewed. It could be that there is some conflict where you live and you want a safe place to stay.
Our thought process was that so many people move back to India and there's really no good avenue for them to manage their finances well. Just shed some light here. But essentially, if you have moved back and you are not a resident of the US anymore, then you're what the US calls a non-resident alien. So any assets that you have above $60,000, that sees up to a 40% inheritance tax in the case the individual passes away. So if somebody has moved back from the US, it certainly makes sense for them to reinvest into UCITS ETFs. And so this is what this individual also did the same thing. So we have people in the US move their Robinhood over to Paasa, liquidate their US holdings, reinvested in UCITS ETFs.
So now let's talk about the taxation when you redeem and reinvest. Okay, Nitish, anything else that returning NRIs should keep in mind? As an NRI, you might be coming to India for reasons good or bad. It could be that your visa is not getting renewed. It could be that there is some conflict where you live and you want a safe place to stay. It could be that you found an amazing opportunity back home, or it could be that your family needs you. Whatever the reason, we have some good news for you today, which is that you can very much keep your money overseas. You can continue to have that money compound in dollars, and you can end up spending that money in rupees. I'm sure as NRIs, you've often thought about, only if you had house help in America or Europe and how much more comfortable life would be. And all that now is possible since you would be in India, but you would continue to earn as if you were in overseas. So to simplify all of that, we have Nitish Sahni, who's founder of Paasa. And Nitish is going to give us some actual case studies of NRIs who've made this shift and what those rules are. So Nitish, shall we begin with your story?
Sure. So firstly, thanks for having me, Neil. Appreciate it. My story, I went to Berkeley, so I did my undergrad over there. And after Berkeley, so I was at Berkeley for 4 years, and then I worked at SoFi for 1 year. And then after SoFi, I decided to come back to India because I wanted to start this company called Paasa. I started with my co-founder Sparsh, and our thought process was that so many people move back to India, and there's really no good avenue for them to manage their finances well. And Sparsh and I both faced this. So you're my co-founder Sparsh. He was in the US for 3 years, also worked at SoFi, moved back to India, wasn't able to manage his finances. So Paasa, for context, is a global investing platform. It's built on interactive brokers. And then we really help returning Indians, which is a big customer cohort for us, returning people moving back from the UK, Australia, US to India, and then helping them instead of, liquidating all of their money and then bringing that back to an Indian bank account in rupees, actually transferring it over to the Paasa account, keeping it in dollars or pounds, and then reinvesting it there.
Yeah. So Nitish, tell us more about your experience in the US and what prompted you to come back. Just for our viewers, so Nitish went to the University of California in Berkeley, and SoFi is a fintech in America. But yeah, tell us more about your lifestyle and things that you miss, things that
I see.
you don't.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I'll start with my time at Berkeley. So I think Berkeley was, an incredible experience. I think so. I did electrical engineering, computer science over there, and I think being in the valley, being around so many people who are so talented and so inspiring, and then especially being at Berkeley in the AI age where all of this research is actually happening right in front of you.
Yeah.
I think that was incredible for me. Me as an individual, I think I always just wanted to work in fintech one way or the other. So yeah, I was in the fintech club at Berkeley. My first internship was at an Indian fintech. Then even my internship in junior year was at SoFi. I was on their data platform team. So I was a software engineer at SoFi, and when I graduated, I got a full-time offer there. Also worked there for 1 year. I think the things I miss there, I say this very often to a lot of people, but I think clean air for one, because now I've moved back to Gurgaon.
Yes.
So I think clean air for sure, but I think tangibly speaking, the things at home like family,
Yeah.
being around the people I've grown up with, family, etc. Like you can't really quantify that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then home food is just home food, but so many amazing things happen in the US, which I'm so grateful for. But now that I've moved back, I couldn't be happier. And I'm also doing, it was funny because at SoFi, when I worked there for 1 year, SoFi applied for my H1B the second time at the end of my first year, and I actually ended up getting the lottery. But luckily, we got into Y Combinator at the same time, which is the VC firm that backed our
Mhm.
company. And I think that gave us a lot of confidence and validation to really move back. So it was a good problem to give up my H1B, move back, and now I'm getting to do the thing I've always wanted to do, which is build in fintech.
Yeah.
So I guess very grateful for what I had there, but even more grateful for what I have now.
Yeah. And when you moved back, you kept your money invested. I assume you would have moved it to Paasa first thing
First
once
thing.
you started Paasa. But tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think you know what. Usually, like a lot of my other friends also move back with me for
Hmm.
whatever reason. Maybe they had to run their family business. Maybe they wanted to. Some of them started their own
Hmm.
companies. Some of them couldn't find jobs over there, so they had to move back.
Hmm.
And the general thinking is that hey, my whatever's in my Robinhood, whatever's in my Bank of America, I'm going to liquidate that entirely, move that money back, and then close that account.
Hmm.
And I think that is certainly not the right way to go about things for several reasons, which I guess we'll break down together now. But broadly speaking, like what one should do is keep the money that you've earned there, keep it in the currency that you've earned it, which is dollars. Instead of liquidating it and converting it to a depreciating currency, move it over to another brokerage account which is friendly to resident Indians, Paasa being one of them, and then reinvest it there, or stay invested however you'd like. So
Yeah.
that's what we did. That's what I did. That's what Sparsh also did.
Yeah. That's very true. And I think one thing that should be clear to our viewers is that there is no legal bar to for you to keep money overseas. And in fact, the money that you have earned while you are an NRI
Yeah.
is what is called free capital. When I say free capital, it means that money that you would have sent out of India using the liberalized remittance scheme, the LRS,
Yeah.
there are various rules around it. You can't, for example, do leverage trading. Um, you can't even do crypto. You can only do defined things, stocks, bonds, ETFs, etc. But with free capital, you
Yeah.
can do
I,
anything.
I'll actually give very tangibly, like something I've been able to do with the free capital that I have in the US is invest in my friends' companies. So, with LRS money, I actually can't invest in a safe note or a convertible note in a Delaware C Corp. But because, I've kept some funds over there, if my friends are starting companies in the US, I can very much put like a very small check in from that free capital in that convertible note and say that, okay, like at
Yeah,
least like legally speaking, it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So there are a lot of things like tangibly I've done. Now, I'm not one to, invest in crypto or
Sure.
leverage ETFs, but to support my friends, I've been able to do that because of the free capital there.
Yeah, and it's really important to emphasize that you should not mix the two. So if you have money that you've earned as an NRI, just make sure you keep that in a separate account.
Hmm.
One good thing about having overseas broking accounts is that you can have multiple broking accounts because many people will have your Indian assets that you earn after you come back
Yeah.
or which you earned before you went overseas.
Yeah.
So that's resident money. Um, so Nitish, you like I said, you can have multiple accounts in Passa. Do you suggest that?
Yeah, we do. So, if you've moved back and you have a Robinhood or a Fidelity, and you're moving that corpus over, keep one PASA account for that. And then say you're transferring money from your HDFC, ICICI, keep a separate PASA account for that. That way, the LRS money, you're not doing anything that's not compliant from a FEMA LRS perspective. And then the free capital that you have from your Robinhood, that you can do your leverage trading, options trading with. So
Yeah.
that logically, I think, is just safer, much better. You have an automatic bifurcation, and then even the taxation, the documents, the reporting, that's also bifurcated at the end of the year because it's under two different accounts.
Yeah,
It just makes
absolutely.
it far easier.
Absolutely. Another thing that's come onto the horizon, of course, is Gift City. So a
Hmm.
lot of NRIs before they move,
Hmm.
they open account in Gift City, and the money can stay there. So, for example, when you remit out money as a resident, you can only have idle money sitting in a bank account for up to 6 months. But when you have free capital, you can have it sit there as long as you want.
Yeah.
You can invest from the Gift City account. So, Nitish, can you give us some case studies of your customers who are returning NRIs?
Hmm.
What do they typically do? What do you suggest to them?
Yeah, several. I think, generally speaking, the modus operandi is, uh, I'll just take one customer's example. So this individual, he moved back because he got selected by this program called the Foundry, which is Nikhil Kamat's incubator. And so he moved back to India. He did his undergrad at NYU, then he worked in investment banking for I think a year or 2 years, moved back, and then he had this Robinhood account in the US. And again, like many others, all of his friends who were going to liquidate it, instead of doing that, he found out about us through social media, and then he transfer those assets over to Paasa from his Robinhood directly to his
His
Paasa,
stocks in Robinhood.
his stocks and ETFs, primarily just ETFs, because in investment banking you're actually not allowed to buy
Okay.
certain stocks. So he moved the ETFs over, and this actually happened without. There's no sale here, so this is actually a broker to broker transfer. It's
Hmm.
called an ACATS transfer. So we enable this. It's very seamless. So he moved it over, and now all of his holdings, all of his ETFs are in Paasa, and now he's reinvested it into UCITS ETFs. So again, like I'll just shed some light here, but essentially, if you have moved back and you're not a resident of the US anymore, then you're what the US calls a non-resident alien. So any assets that you have above $60,000, that sees up to a 40% inheritance tax in the case the individual passes away. So if somebody has moved back from the US, it certainly makes sense for them to reinvest into UCITS ETFs. And so this is what this individual also did the same thing.
Hmm.
Around the time he moved back, the commodities index was doing incredibly well. So he bought, the iShares Bloomberg Commodities Index, CMOD. So this is just a very specific case study I'm giving you. But typically, this is what we see. So we have people in the US move their Robinhood over to Paasa, liquidate their US holdings, reinvested in UCITS ETFs, so they're protected from an estate point of view. And then
Yeah.
taxation at the end of the year, we give all the statements that you need from an ITR perspective as
Yes.
well.
And I'll come to the taxation part in a minute, but
Sure.
you have a very excellent UCITS screener now.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, I think UCITS as an instrument, the UCITS ETF, I think there's a long way to go for an education perspective and even from a tooling perspective. And this is what we realized. Like a lot of people would open Paasa accounts and then they would say that, you've given this. I don't even know how to pick a US ETF well, and you're expecting me to pick a European domicile UCITS ETF. So then we realized that the education and the tooling that we have to build around this is going to be very, very high. In case, given that this is good for them and we need adoption to be high as well. So then we bought this domain ucits.info, and in my opinion, I'm very biased, but I think we've built the best screener in the world for UCITS ETFs. So
Guys,
you can
do check it out. Let us know in the comments if you like it, don't like it. Let us know.
Yeah, in my eyes, it's the best screener I've ever used, and we've really tried to make it really awesome. You can, build portfolios of UCITS ETFs, back test it, stress test it as well. Like, what if a COVID-like scenario comes? Then it'll simulate the holdings. There's simulations in it, comparisons, deep dives if there's a overlap between UCITS ETFs, like all of that. We've really gone the whole 9 yards with this, so would certainly appreciate feedback.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, in case all of this sounds very complicated to you,
Hmm.
very simply, UCITS ETFs are exchange traded funds. Just like you have in India, Nifty, Sensex. Similarly, there are exchange traded funds, ETFs, in the US and in Europe. The reason why UCITS is important is because if you have US assets exceeding $60,000 on your death, then US will impose the estate tax, as Nitish mentioned, whereas Europe will not. And that's where UCITS, UCITS comes in.
I guess now that you've mentioned this, I have something to add as well. All the ETFs in the US, they distribute dividends. So from a taxation point of view, once you move back to India, you're paying tax at your slab rate on those dividends. The
Yeah.
amazing thing about UCITS is that you have somewhat of a tax arbitrage as well.
Yeah.
Because just as in India, you have mutual funds that are growth mutual funds and
Yeah.
IDCW dividend distributing mutual funds. Even with UCITS, you have accumulating UCITS and distributing
Yes.
UCITS.
Yes.
So what we really suggest is purchase the accumulating UCITS. So at the fund level, at the ETF level itself, the dividends are being rolled back into the fund. So that way, since those dividends aren't being distributed out to you, you're not paying any dividend tax, and whatever that dividend that you're getting is essentially getting converted to capital gains.
Yes.
And capital gains long term is 12.5%.
Correct.
So that tax arbitrage gets created, which I think is
Absolutely.
really useful.
Absolutely.
For
No, I know it all too well because I have US ETFs. I began investing a long time ago before I knew about UCITS, so I'm stuck with my US ETFs. And every year they get dividends, and every year I have mixed feelings. I really enjoy the fact that I get US dollar dividends every year, but I have to collect the withholding tax certificate from my broker and give it to my CA.
Yeah.
And now the government has said CA certificate is mandatory, so my CA will probably charge me extra for the privilege of giving me a certificate on withholding tax. But Yeah, accumulating growth option makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about the taxation when you redeem and reinvest. So Nitish's last example, the case study he cited, where his friend, when he moved back, sold his existing US ETFs and moved to UCITS. So, of course, many of you will ask the question, and I get this all the time. We have lots of conversations with returning NRIs. That what about the tax while doing that shift? And the good news is that India has a status called resident but not ordinarily resident, RNOR. Now, if you qualify for this status, and we'll come to the criteria for it in a minute, but if you qualify for this status, then in that period, typically 1 or 2 years, India does not tax your foreign income. This is when you can do this shift. You can book all of your profits
Yeah.
in all of your foreign holdings, reset the cost price, and those booked profits will not attract any tax.
Yeah.
And then from that day onwards, when you become resident, of course, again, those gains will be taxed, but you have reset the cost price. So you have protected the gains that you made when you lived abroad.
That's correct.
And in many cases, that can be huge tax saving because you would have probably earned a fair amount of money already.
Yeah, and I think this is especially true for the class of people who have spent maybe 10, 20 years in the US, and then they would return maybe because their parents are unwell, or they don't want to raise their children in the US and they want to raise them in India. So for them, this RNOR status is incredible.
Yeah.
So we very much don't sort of guide folks there. We act as a platform, and we've written a lot of content around the RNOR status.
Yeah.
But certainly, like, we've seen a lot of these folks who are older,
Mm.
they would leverage that and just reset their cost basis entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, I guess we could get to the rules now.
Yeah. So you have to
Um,
qualify within one of two rules.
Yeah.
You have to either be non-resident for 9 out of the past 10 financial years.
Yep.
Or you have to ensure that you have spent no more than 729 days in the past 7
Yeah.
financial years in India. So essentially what these two rules test is that you have been away for long enough and you have not tried to game the system by only being away a little bit and mostly being in India. So once you satisfy these conditions, then you can claim RNOR.
That's true. And I think it's also incredibly surprising to see the number of people who don't know about
Yeah.
this. And then they would liquidate their holdings and
Yeah.
move it back to India and pay full tax. So I think, yeah, I think, this is perhaps something that should be highlighted a lot more and should be part of the common discourse
Yeah, yeah.
for returning Indians, which I don't think is,
Yeah, especially while it lasts. You never know what the finance minister does
I guess.
one day, but so far it is so good. Okay, Nitish, anything else that returning NRIs should keep in mind?
From a financial perspective or generally?
Well, both.
Okay, I think from a financial perspective, I think you hit the nail initially. I think, if folks have been abroad and they've created income or created a corpus in dollars, I think point A is just to retain that corpus, especially now, given the rupee has depreciated 10-12% in the last year. I think second thing to keep in mind is FEMA tax. That's something to really look at, whether you fall under the RNOR, whether you don't. A lot of people who have extremely large corpuses, they also like moving their assets into a trust. So you've seen this, we don't help with it, but we've seen that a lot of people do this. So if you're that class of individual, then that's perhaps something you
Mm.
could look into as well. But yeah, I think from a financial POV, if you're just looking at protecting your assets and then filing compliantly on those protected assets, I think that's very important. But I don't think I'm one to comment non-financially, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, be prepared for the food shock to your system
Yeah, I
after
guess,
many
yeah.
years abroad.
Yeah.
And also, financially, I would say get a CA who specialized in these matters because a lot of CAs in India don't understand complexities of international tax.
Very fair.
All right, Nitish, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Neil.
Pleasure.
Thank you.